fix their mouths to speak about Grand Bahama in the manner in which the Minister of Finance has done in this budget communication.
Fine.
His words are patently untrue. Speaker?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. 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 I'm saying his words are patently untrue. I just demonstrated. You want me to go through it again? Because I get unlimited time. I could go through it again. Mr. Speaker, yes, patently untrue. Patently. And everybody can add up 1 and 1 is 2. Every Bahamian who's listening and watching live these proceedings, they know whether we left it devastated or whether we worked hard to do a lot on behalf of the people of Grand Bahama. So, Mr. Speaker, throughout the islands, we engaged in infrastructural works. We constructed a new aerodrome in Stanley Key, Exuma, to better support the economy of that community. We redeveloped the San Salvador Airport. We were well advanced in the redevelopment plans at Exuma and North Eleuthera airports. And I'm very concerned. I heard no mention about Exuma or North Eleuthera, and I want the people of those communities, the members, one member here, North Eleuthera is right here. North Eleuthera right here. Yes, you will. North Eleuthera is right here. So I am asking the people of those communities with their representatives in this house, because they speak in here and you speak out there, to take note that we have not yet heard what the plans are for new airports in those communities. We called for the redevelopment of the Mayaguana runway and reestablished Bahamas Air flights to Mayaguana for the first time in several years. Yes. We began the groundwork for the connectivity, and this was only in its beginnings, and I want to urge on the government to continue it, dealing with the connectivity of the southern islands, Rum Key, Ragged Island, Long Island, Acklands, and Crooked Island. And I'm asking that you, Mayaguana, that you look very closely at those ensuring connectivity. I think flights go twice a week, and and in Rum Key there's no flight at all. And Ragged Island there's no flight. So the people are isolated, and so we didn't get to advances as we should, as far as I would have liked to have done so. But I'm trusting that this government will see the wisdom in pursuing that. Einstein. We completed phases 2 and 3 of LPIA. We completed the installation of emergency lights on every single government-owned airport. Yes. We extended potable water to parts of East Grand Bahama. Seawall in Smith's Bay were completed. Smith's Point, sorry, Smith's Point. Smith's Point. Yes, Smith's Bay. And in Smith's Bay, you got that in. We sought to strengthen Bahamas Air, and we heard the talk about the planes and that the principal is due. Well, the principal is due. Pay the principal, Speaker. The acquisition of a new fleet of aircraft. And I'm advised, and the former minister is sitting right next to me. He said that they have been successful in reducing the state subsidy of the national carrier. Hold on, man. This is an important point that was achieved by my brother over here. The state subsidy of the national carrier was substantially reduced by at least 50%. So the 14 million, the 14.5 you spoke to is actually original $30 million in space of 5 years. It's just, it's an incredible achievement.
Not only that, look at the balance.
Okay. We concluded air service agreements with scores of countries, and most notably with Germany, thereby paving the way for the inaugural flight of Condor Air out of Germany later this year. I think we did about 15 or more air service agreements to facilitate air traffic between the Bahamas and other countries. But Germany is panning out already with Condor Air. That's transatlantic. The last 5 years saw an expansion in our tourism product, introducing new brands to Bahamas, including Hyatt at Bahama, with Rosewood and SLS scheduled to come on board, Warwick, Resorts World in Bimini, Albany, the Bahamian-owned Island Hotel, Marriott. New airlift was introduced from places throughout the United States of America to Exuma, to Abaco, Grand Bahama, San Salvador, and Nassau. Indeed, the new Minister of Tourism, I saw it on TV, his recent appearance in Exuma to welcome new airlift on that island was the result of the hard work that preceded him in that ministry. Speaker, we took the Bahamas a long way along the path of a complete modernization of our aviation sector, including the investment of state-of-the-art technology. A beautiful radar. We undertook a comprehensive study of our network of airports, the Stantec study, and undertook a further study in conjunction with the IDB for attracting PPPs for the redevelopment of several of our airports. Mr. Speaker, the list I just gone through is long, but it is not exhaustive. I'm just trying to show the spectrum of work that has been done over the last 5 years, because we heard a tone and attitudinal positioning about this party. Sorry? They ain't do nothing, and ain't no good. Teeth, lousy, no good. Mr. Speaker, we worked hard, but we were saddled with an opposition that sought to undermine our efforts every step of the way. It's just the reality of it. They called us everything in the book. And for myself, not at this Parliament, because I think they could not, they knew they could not do that. But for myself, in the FNM campaign and their messaging, suggested that $48 million was missing. I think I heard the member for Yamakor speak on TV about this, that $48 million was missing from the Road Traffic Department. Mr. Speaker, the shoe is now on the other foot, and the minister is here. And I have to tell you, Mr. Speaker, I will not rest. I got 5 years in here, God willing, until this administration brings to light the basis for that forming a part of their campaign, because I am certain the Auditor General's report never disclosed that. I mean, the member which were you? No, Brensel, which were you?
Garden Hills.
Garden Hills. He knows.
Yeah, he was
If you look at what the Auditor General said, yes, if you look at what he used at the premise, that would go when he was there, when someone was there before him. They never said there was $48 million here and someone teeth it.
He never condemned you, though.
But this, no,
He
he
knows
knows better.
Yes.
You know, he never did, because he
He
knows.
should advise his colleagues.
Should advise his
I'm sure he did, but he probably said,
Yeah,
let's see if we get away with that. I know you wouldn't do that. No. Well, you're there, and you were there, and the same issues they pointed to.
How much
You want me to get the auditor? Actually, if you want me to go to what happened when you were there, I could do that, because I was there, and I wouldn't want to do that. But what I'm saying to you is, because you're being facetious. No problem, the day will come. You know that. We weren't here before. The day could come. Yes, it could come. The Auditor General never said, in fact, how could you steal 48 million, man? How you do that? Every day, the monies are taken by armored truck to the ministry and the Ministry of Finance. They're public funds. So how could anyone sit down and steal 48 million? It's ludicrous. But the Auditor General, I want you to come and do it. I want you to know, I will insist that you bring the basis for your lies, excuse me, I take that word back, the basis for your untruths on the campaign trail about the Road Traffic Department. You did a disservice to the people who work there, because I don't work there.
They feel about it.
I don't be there.
They feel about it.
No, I mean you, collective you.
You don't collect no
I don't collect no money. I don't work there. I've probably been on there 2 or 3 times, throughout the years. They are competent Bahamians, and they manage themselves very well. But you did a disservice to the people who work there. But time will tell, because I will be, and I'm glad you're strengthening the Auditor General. You might even do some select committees. So listen, we got 5 years. We ain't gonna rush it. I just letting you know what you did was wrong. Speaker, I have further reviewed, and let me just say, I looked at the revenue projected by the Road Traffic Department in the estimated provided by this government. And note, in fact, quite apart from some claim of missing money, there's an appreciable enhancement of revenue since automation. But if you look at that enhancement, it does not disclose that you should have had you lost 48 million the year before, or any year before. The numbers are not anywhere like that. And so, Mr. Speaker, we will see. And what disappoints me is the media houses did not give appropriate analysis. Sometimes you need to get accountants, forensic accountants, who have to read a report. That's all you needed. That's what I did. I got a forensic accountant to read the report. Just read the report, and you will see that what was being advanced. But it was like a wildfire, And it's water under the bridge now. But Speaker, I want to make sure that the facts are known for the Bahamian people, because it was a ludicrous assertion. Speaker, this and other allegations, including assertions in the budget communication, are part of a warped strategy on the part of this F&M government. That is why, in one breath, they can effortlessly say one thing and then completely contradict themselves in another breath. It's all through the communication. You see that happening. The question we asked, if things are so horrible and the debt situation so dire, why are you? Now, I heard some explanation by the minister, and I don't accept it. I don't understand it. Why are you, within a few days of taking office, how much days, 18 days or whatever it is, borrowing so much money at the beginning of a new administration? First days, it is not transparent, and there is no accountability. And we will be asking lots of questions about this dubious and suspect strategy. Mr. Speaker, you could do that. You could do that. Listen, freedom of information. So what you keeping this? You keeping this stuff secret? No, man. No. Listen, you do whatever you feel is necessary to allay my suspicion about what you're doing here. Speaker, I want to assure the Bahamian people that our strength as a political organization is more than the 4 members who now sit in this House. Indeed, in 1997, we had 6 members, and within 5 years, we went on to win the government by a landslide victory. Well, you know these things are in the hands of a higher power. Yes. Yes. So we wouldn't try to get too much into the business of that higher power. But Speaker, we know that the strength of the PLP goes beyond this. That's my St. Matthew's member right there. We know the strength of the PLP goes beyond this parliament and is multiplied exponentially. Plenty voted for you. That's how you win. And they're right there. They probably getting buyer's remorse quick soon and very, very soon. Because, whatever. But they are throughout the length and breadth of the Bahamas. And who we are and what we are, the history of this party, resonates in the hearts and souls of many of our people. We know who we are, and what we are is reiterated every day of our national life, whether it is the bright and promising student at the University of the Bahamas, didn't exist 5 years ago, or a courageous Defense Force officer at sea in defense of our shores, which the F&M, well, the university has certain legal and structural components, But the minister is there. I mean, if he doesn't believe it exists, he could let everybody who's working in that environment know he doesn't believe it exists. But I don't think he will say that. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, just last Friday, the country would have seen that even in the face of defeat, the PLPs turned up en masse to support the workers of this country on Labor Day. And so, Mr. Speaker, we are alive and well. We will, in this House and as a political organization, hold true to our principles and work to re-energize our base. Mr. Speaker, it is indisputable that the history of the PLP is the foundational history of the modern Bahamas. Where's St. Anne's gone? St. Anne's left?
Yeah, don't include that.
Okay.
So you don't include that.
And it is the driving ethos for our continuing policies as a political organization. And Mr. Speaker, no amount of propaganda, no amount of manipulations, no amount of wishful thinking can change this dynamic, factual reality. We are alive and well throughout this country, Mr. Speaker. And so, Mr. Speaker, as a member of this organization, I am proud to be an inheritor of this great legacy. No one else, no other party could say that. Only us in the PLP. No political party can claim perfection. But in our perfect imperfection, this country has moved from strength to strength. Yes, we ain't perfect. We ain't perfect. We're not perfect. We ain't perfect. But boy, we could. Okay? Speaker, politics, and I want to say this to my brothers and sisters in here, or on the other side, because I've been there. Politics is the story of ebb and flow of political power. And even the giants of our political reality were or are aware of that dynamic, because they too have been subject to it themselves. It's happened on your side, it happened on our side. Indeed, in fact, there's some people who I love who were with me, and they, you know, I took it hard, they didn't make it through. But this is how politics is. That's how it is.
Yes.
Indeed, I have now sat on both sides of the aisle of this house. Twice. Twice over there, twice over here. I would have preferred 3 times over there. But you know. And so, Mr. Speaker, I have a settled appreciation of this fact, that it's my duty, and you can find, I know it's my duty to respect the will of the people in general elections as it is expressed at any given moment in our history, and I do. I respect it. So, Mr. Speaker, I pledge to you, Mr. Speaker, that you will never hear me talking down my country or expressing hopelessness or misrepresenting the truth of the country as it relates to my people, as that side officer did ad nauseum over the last 5 years when they sat on this side of the House in opposition. And Mr. Speaker, you know, it seems they're even prepared to do it in government. And I was interested. It's the point of, no, I should keep reading and introduce us. And so, Mr. Speaker, what's the point of order?
Privilege.
Privilege? Oh, okay.
Mr. Speaker, the member is suggesting somehow that this side, either in opposition or as the government, is somehow running down the Bahamas or the Bahamian people. Talking down, I think that's the word, talking down the Bahamas or the Bahamian people. That is absolutely incorrect, it is wrong, and it's insulting, Mr. Speaker. The fact of the matter is that as opposition, we spoke to the government as we saw the facts. And you know, this was a tactic that they used over and over. Whenever you disagree with them, oh, you're being unpatriotic. Mr. Speaker, just as they are over there today, they have an obligation on the people that they represent and the people of this country to point out an alternative view. I don't call them unpatriotic for that. That's the view. And so it is unfair, and she really ought to withdraw that. I know, you never would. I didn't expect you to.
I ain't going to do it. Then you're the government. I'm not going to do it. No, I'm saying you will not see me doing that while you are government. That's my pledge to you. Okay? So, Mr. Speaker, but the reason I raised it because I didn't read it thoroughly, and I didn't really have much time. I'm going to read it later on this evening, but I saw that Moody's was listening to the members' communication, and there seemed to be a suggestion that based on that communication, that it was alerting them to issues they were not previously alert to, and it sort of reopened or opened a can of worms. And I say that to say this, Mr. Speaker. You know, the Bahamian people tell you, watch out for the power of the tongue. Be really careful. I remember one time when the member for North Abaco was sitting, we were in opposition. We were talking about Bahamas. And at the time, the former owner was trying to connect with a well-known casino operator out of the United States. But it was struggling. He ended up going to the Chinese for funding, and it was just very complicated. And I remember the member for North Abaco saying about that owner.
Yeah.
You remember? He ain't got no money. And within 24 hours, the company wrote a letter, which I saw, which they attribute a number of reasons, was not just that, but they added into that the comments of the member for North Abaco in the Parliament, which shocked me. It's a very well-known, probably the biggest casino operator, one of the biggest in North America. So I say that to say, and I leave it there. I only want to make that point because there's politics and then there's the Bahamas. And you have to be very careful, Mr. Speaker. Speaker, I've given my pledge, and I want to say that I don't care how much I want political power. I ain't gonna never do that, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I assure you that I will not be seen to advocate in this House on behalf, and this is my pledge. I will not advocate for no foreign power, for no foreign vested interests. And I saw some stuff on this side in the last term which caused me concern. And I also know the dynamics of the last general elections and the observations of the OAS. And the OAS made some, in their preliminary report, which I have here, and I can lay it if it's deemed, it said the mission heard concerns from several stakeholders regarding the influence of foreign money in the current electoral process and the absence of a level playing field. Now, this is not pointing the finger to anyone. This is what they said about our elections. So it could be any, I don't know what they're saying, but they're saying something, there was a concern. They said that the Bahamas has no regulations regarding political electoral financing or disclosure of sources of funding. There is no public funding for political parties or candidates, meaning electoral campaigns are privately funded. And we know the pressures that creates. The origin of private funds is not regulated, and there are no prohibitions on foreign and anonymous sources. This is the OAS saying about the Bahamas election. Also, the Bahamas sets no limits. No, I said it's the OAS speaking about the elections in the Bahamas. Were you there? I was there. There's elections in the Bahamas. The Bahamian people are smart, man. Let's don't press these issues too much, okay? Let's just keep going. I'm just telling you they made observations about this issue, and we should all support this. We should support this.
Honourable member.
Sorry.
I notice your time has expired. Would you be requiring some more time?
Yeah.
No? Is that so long, bye-bye?
How much more time would you
Sorry?
how much more time would you be
I need
requiring?
about 15 minutes. Okay. Not you. And, no, but let me finish reading this report, though.
The chair recognizes the member for Elizabeth.
Member for Engliston was proceeding so well, but I do wish to ask her to retract a statement that she made regarding renovations at Durand Memorial Hospital. Over the last 5 years, there has been no completed renovation at Durand Memorial Hospital. There has been the start of the cafeteria, the physician's quarters, and the kitchen. None of that construction has been completed. So if you would be so kind as to withdraw that statement.
No. Well, you know, I thought that they conducted renovations at the, so there was nothing, no worker being in there do nothing. As you say?
I'm advised.
You have unfinished work for 5 years.
I'm advised there has been no renovations completed at the Rand Memorial Hospital in the 5 years that the side opposite has been in power. So if the member for Engliston would withdraw her statement, I'd be much appreciative.
So are you? But you know, my information is that renovations were undertaken. I mean, if you, I don't think I'm going to withdraw it. I mean, you say one thing, I say another. It's there for anyone to see. If they weren't completed, they weren't completed. My information is that they were undertaken. Okay.
But they were
All right.
undertaken.
So let me just get back to this point, though, because this is the point of using foreign funding in our campaigns. In 2012, the OAS issued a number of recommendations regarding the establishment of a legal framework for the financing of political parties and campaigns. The EOM noted that there was no action in this regard. In order to guarantee a more level playing field and transparency in the electoral process, the mission urges the Bahamas once more to consider introducing legislation to regulate political campaign financing. Yes, we could have done it, yes. And so have you, and so let's see if it gets done. Right. Every government pledges to do it, but no one does it. We got to get it done. We got to get it done. So, Speaker, so Mr. Speaker, so I'm going to go to the budget, and I got my I generously been given additional moments in here. Finally, Speaker, but you know the budget is everything. Let me say at the outset that we are all politicians, so I understand the political rhetoric which comes with the territory. But I must confess that this budget, communication, has been drenched in politically biased rhetoric in a way I do not ever recall. And I say that very seriously. And in a way that has been calculated to skew the truth. In fact, it is my view that this communication, these are my words, has been venomous, vitriolic, and it is uncharacteristic and unprecedented of the tone normally expected of a document which speaks to our national economy. I summarize by saying,
15 minutes. 15 minutes, they would have never given me 15 minutes.
No, the chair has granted
in-house fighting over there.
the chair has granted an additional 10 minutes.
No, Mr. Speaker, the side opposite said 15. If the Minister of Finance, let me read faster, Mr. Speaker. Speaker, if the Minister of Finance would look to what the former member for North Abaco, how he did his budgets, he would have found that would have been a standard set. It is my view that what was done fell below the standard, the tone and content of this budget. Speaker, I refer. You forget a member for fortuity. You must don't remember, man. You're taking my time. Leave me alone now. Speaker, I refer them only to the previous, I've talked about that, Speaker. Speaker, this communication is replete with mutually contradictory assertions. It is premised upon some colossal myth that the FNM has been some paragon of political virtue in our country. We know the facts show years of fiscal mismanagement by the FNM, numerous instances of corruption, and failures of epic proportions on the part of FNM governments. The list is long and they know it. Why do you think, Mr. Speaker, the Bahamian people send them home? Why do you think they just send them home because they want to change the government, Speaker? The government, whatever they have a reason. People have a reason. They have a reason. Speaker, the government now seeks to deodorize their track record, but the facts are there. The biggest issue with the budget communication is that it discloses the hoax played by this government on the Bahamian people. The FNM was all over the country making extravagant emotional promises. To single out 3 of those promises, they said that they would implement duty-free concessions over the hill. They promised to provide free tuition to every student who was accepted, to provide accommodation on a stipend. And they famously promised the elimination of VAT on breadbasket items, electricity and medical insurance. Now they come to this honorable house and say, OMG. That's what they're telling us. OMG. They claim the state of our economy catches them by surprise. And so unfortunately, their promises will not see the light of day right up and now. So Speaker, the government is being disingenuous and should credit the Bahamian people with some intelligence. A mid-year economic statement was given in this house, and the minister was here in March of this year, which disclosed that our initial forecast of a fiscal deficit of $99.5 million would not hold. He told them that. And he said based on the evidence, information then available, we'd be looking at a deficit of at least $350 million as a result of the ravages of Hurricane Matthew, a Category 5 hurricane which hit multiple islands and most significantly concentrated populations based in New Providence. What is perplexing, Speaker, that pages 40 to 43 of the communication, he explicitly concedes the impact of Hurricane Matthew, Mr. Speaker. And so, Mr. Speaker, now we're hearing they're not going to honor their commitments to the people over the hill. And the young people who thought they had a direct path to University of the Bahamas, that ain't going to happen. The FNM said on the campaign train that it's the people's time. But today they say, OMG, they didn't know. And so now they cannot fulfill the promises they made.
The chair recognizes.
With the greatest respect to the member, she's misleading the House. The government of the Bahamas never said that we are not going to follow through on our commitments. What we have said to the Bahamian people is that given the state of the economy and the fiscal affairs of the country, the nightmare that we met, that we're going to have to delay the implementation of some of the proposals that we've made until we can get our fiscal house in order. It is the responsible thing to do, Mr. Speaker. And it is incredible that the member would take advantage of this, I mean, incredibly generous position that you have taken to try and mislead this House. It's ridiculous.
Yes.
We could do an hour and a half each. Why we can't do that? Why not? We can do that. The rules allow for it.
The member Ferguson, please continue.
This is it. No, the member had almost 3 hours. He made his case. He said they didn't know. He said they said OMG, but I said you ain't saying no OMG because you knew it wasn't 90 million. You knew it was at least 350 million. So when you went to them rallies and you told them people you can do them things, you knew the facts. You come in here OMG. Well, I say LOL. I don't believe you. Okay, Speaker? You cannot expect the intelligent people to accept that, Mr. Speaker. And the member for Kalani, the one who's being so generous, give me the next couple of minutes, I appreciate it. All through his campaign and his political ads, told us his heart is over the hill. That's what he tell us. Shucks, he even cut his birthday cake over the hill. Well, Mr. Speaker, I think the member got to understand the Bahamian people are looking more than a slice of birthday cake, Mr. Speaker. They want more than a heavy dose of empty words and gimmicks, especially in light of those promises they made. And unfortunately, the only thing those people got in this go-round is an IOU. We had an OMG, a LOL, now we got an IOU. Speaker, so they were boarded. They say they're coming back to it, but I don't think we can see it anytime soon, Speaker. And so because this government, because they were not realistic concessions on behalf of the Bahamian people in the first place. And like I say, you knew, Speaker. And so because the government has started out by not being forthright, not being transparent, we must express extreme concern when they were borrowed $772 million, Mr. Speaker. I want to know why you need to borrow it in one fell swoop. Who are you paying? And what are you paying for? And we can get those answers in this budget debate, Mr. Speaker. So have them ready. Mr. Speaker, and I'm trying to move through quickly because my time is winding down. And Mr. Speaker, I declare this is not the people's budget, and it definitely ain't looking like the people's time right about now, Speaker. We note, Speaker, and I didn't hear anything about the mortgage program. I want to just put that out there. Maybe there's something that's going to be done, but I just want to put out there. Speaker, this budget does nothing for the poor and middle class in the Bahamas, but it's targeting the very, very wealthy, some of whom may be members of this House, Mr. Speaker. In this regard, I raise a question, and I don't want to be offensive to anybody, Speaker, because my spirit ain't good at doing it like that, Mr. Speaker, but I want to raise a concern about potential conflict of interest relative to favorable concessions in this budget, Speaker, that arguably might impact the financial interests of members. And I believe our rules require that you have to declare that, so it's out in the open. Speaker, and the Minister of Finance, he declared in his communication at page 50, at page 50 he speaks about the duties that are being exempted. And what I found interesting about this, in his description, right here, he said providing duty exemption on equipment and machinery specifically designed for ground repair, maintenance, and service of cruise ships and sea vessels that can conduct domestic and international travel. But in fact, the actual provision speaks to seacraft and aircraft, air or sea services. That was not, well, you have an issue now with even with the vessels, Speaker. But and not that it is deliberate per se, but we have to have an awareness that these peculiar concessions do impact the financial interest, could impact the financial interest of Speaker. And so you have exemptions or tax reductions and there are multiple items for aircraft in this budget. And I support incentivizing the aviation sector. I'm former Minister of Aviation. But I don't know if I saw such a complete package in this way. You have the catering for the aircraft, you got the tires for the aircraft, etc. And so, Mr. Speaker, I believe that the minister should clarify whether this impacts him, his financial interests, and I believe it's merely an oversight, and maybe did not think it necessary, I don't know. But from my knowledge, there may be a connection there, and it should have been disclosed, Mr. Speaker. Speaker, then we talk about the seacraft, and of course, who in here could be affected by this. And Speaker, the concessions on potato chips and marmalade are great. But we note, and bread is listed, bread already is duty exempt. There's no duty on bread, and it's listed in the thing. From what I understand, there's no duty. But unless there is protection for the consumer, there's a very strong probability that the savings will not be passed on to them. And these concessions will amount to no more than an embellishment of profits for merchants. And so I want to point out to the members that we should make sure that this gets to the ground level and people benefit from it. And Speaker, the business license.
Honourable member, you have 60 seconds.
Okay.
Wrap.
The business license fee, I think we're not clear on that. That only applies to businesses $50 million, an outturn of $50 million or more. Does not apply to small and medium businesses. We were not told that, but that's the truth. This is a big business. The amendments to the Stamp Act, they've now amended the stamp duty payable on transfer of land. You now have, Bahamians now have a right up to a certain level, I think it's 500,000, duty-free, first-home, stamp duty-free, first-home owners. And under this provision, that is being removed from you. And they didn't tell us that. They missed out that big, important thing. That's not true. Okay, let me read it to you. Let me read it to you.
Honourable member?
Sorry. He's saying it's
Your
not true.
extension has now expired.
Let me just, can I respond to what
No,
you say? No, you're not going to answer me and I ain't going to answer you back. That can't happen like that.
No, I'm going to answer you back.
Good.
Because you made a very specific
Yes.
allegation.
Yes.
Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise on a point of personal privilege. And I'm going to ask the member to retract the statement that she made. She makes implies that the Minister of Finance has somehow made a decision with respect to customs duties on aircraft parts to benefit the minister's interest. Now listen. It is no secret in this place or in the public that I do have an interest in Sky Bahamas Airlines. I've never made a secret of that, Mr. Speaker. As an aircraft. I also, as an airline, yeah. Aircraft.
It ain't a holiday resort on the east and western end of the island.
Mr. Speaker, here's the point of it. I have said throughout my budget presentation that the government of the Bahamas, this Minister of Finance, has had very little to do with changing anything in it. As a matter of fact, it might be interesting to note that I didn't recognize that was in there until I was reading it. And so when she suggests that this Minister of Finance somehow amended or proposed an amendment to the duty rates to benefit him, that is a complete and utter lie. And that's a strong word. It is intentionally misleading, and it is injurious to me and to my reputation.
Honourable Member Ferguson, do you have any evidence to the assertions that you made?
No, Mr. Speaker. I didn't say, Mr. Speaker, no, I didn't say decisions he made. He said that. I never said that. I said that we are obliged, when we debate in this Parliament,
To declare.
to declare if we have an interest. It doesn't mean it impacts your decision-making. It's part of transparency. It's an old, and you would know it, Mr. Speaker. It's just an obligation. It doesn't say that. I'm not saying that the member did this for, I didn't say that. I said that perhaps he ought to have disclosed it. And that is what you normally do. If you have some connection or interest in something that you're debating before a house, you disclose it. That's what you do.
That's what you said.
That's all you do. And so I never said that the member did that, but I'm saying that, I am saying though, Mr. Speaker, that this is a budget for the very, very rich, and the people over the hill have been thrown under the bus in this budget, Mr. Speaker. And Speaker, I want to thank Engliston for sending me back here and let them know I can stand strong on their behalf without being offensive to anyone. And I'm not saying that member did something for a reason. I'm saying he admits he has an interest in these aircraft, etc., that we have tax concessions, generous tax concessions for aircraft, and it ought to have been something that he put on the table. That's all. That's all.
Honorable member, please go on, Bahamas.
Speaker, once again, you know, I'm going to leave it pretty much there. Only to say, as I said before, I have disclosed here in this House, and I've disclosed at the Disclosure Commission my involvement with the airline industry. It's not a secret, Mr. Speaker. Secondly, the proposal to eliminate duties on aircraft was not made by me. It was made by that side, when I was sitting over there, taking heat, Mr. Speaker. And so I do regret the member's implication that I somehow was doing something that brought a personal benefit to me. Now, Mr. Speaker, further than that, Mr. Speaker, just so the member is clear, it is in the best interest of the Bahamas to do what is being done, because it creates the opportunity for an industry that has not existed or has not been able to rise to the level of its potential. That is to establish a aircraft repair facility here in the Bahamas. And so I applaud the former minister for bringing that provision. But I don't want anyone out there to believe that this was something that I did for some personal benefit, Mr. Speaker. So I just want to make that clear. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, the member talked about the mid-year budget and their presentation or forecast that it was going to be $348 million. Well, you know what, Mr. Speaker? $348 million is still a far cry from $500 million. And so, yeah, we acknowledge. Right? But the fact of the matter is, we are $400 million further in debt than was forecasted. That is the basic point, and you can't walk away from that. Numbers don't lie. And so when you talk about who wrote an IOU, that's your IOU, Mr. Speaker.
LOL.
The chair recognizes the member for Cat Island.
Mr. Speaker, lest the principle be lost in the explanation by the member. The principle raised by the member of Engliston is that if during the course of a debate you have an interest in the matters that is raised in the debate, right, you have the moral obligation, to all of us do, to say, well, look, I have an interest in this matter. That's all she said. Right. Yeah, the fact that you have declared that you have interest in an airline business, I didn't remember that, but now that I remember it, I think you had the moral obligation to suggest that. Now, Mr. Speaker, I go further to say, that once he had read it, he said it came to his attention when he read his contribution. Well, once it came to your attention, that is when you may have overlooked the fact that maybe I should have mentioned it. That's all. So the principle there ought to be. That's the principle.
I said you overlooked.
He overlooked it. She mentioned that you may have overlooked it. So there's no imputation once he said that.
But all of us could be affected
you need not
get
be
hot on the collar.
hot. That's all. That's the point she was making. Now, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker.
So could I get 10 more minutes?
Mr. Speaker, No, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the minister also referred to the mid-year budget. That's my. That's my. Right? The mid-year statement. The mid-year statement, wherein the performance of the fiscal affairs of the country was laid in Parliament. Now, I don't want to confuse. No. That's what I'm talking. I'm just addressing the matter you raised. Mr. Speaker. No. What were you doing? No, you don't answer. No, if you answer that, then I will.
Honorable members.
Mr. Speaker, may I have just leave, because there is a matter that is rather misleading, or attempt to mislead, and that is no. I think it ought to be done now, so that whenever you all could clean it up after, if anyone who speaks after wishes, right? And this is that, and I will refer to the resolution that we passed. They call it emergency funding.
Honorable member, are you making a contribution at this stage?
No, I'm just talking. I'm just addressing the commentary made by the member on the mid-year budget.
On what basis? On what basis?
On what basis?
On a point of order?
On the basis that he misled. The statement made has the probability of misleading.
But you would have the opportunity when you make your response to address that matter.
But Mr. Speaker, I would have thought it'd be more prudent, since it's fresh in the minds of us all, to do so now. Since it is fresh in all of our minds, to do so now, because it then sinks into the minds of everyone who have heard him now. And when I speak to clear it up, persons who would have heard him may not hear me. It's not two bites. No.
Since time is of the essence, since time is of the essence, and I want to be as fair as possible, particularly in the circumstances. The chair would prefer for you to make your contribution during your response.
Well, I will yield to the preference of the chair.
Every 15 minutes you take now, every 15 minutes
As many? The chair recognizes the member for Centerville.
Right.
Good afternoon, Mr. Speaker and members of this Honorable House of Assembly. I stand here today representing the good and wonderful people of the constituency of Centerville. And by extension, the good and wonderful people of East Street and Farm Road. As this is the season of Pentecost, I am reminded of the many gifts and talents of Bahamian people everywhere, and the many gifts and talents of the many children of Centerville and the Bahamas at large. I would like to give thanks to Almighty God, as it is through His grace and mercy I am able to stand here today. I would like to thank Him for His many blessings He bestowed on me, in particular my wife, Tara Chipman, and our children, Yulia, Rhett, and Scarlett. to the many children of Centerville and the Bahamas. This historic election result, that is, unseating a prime minister, was all about you. It was to show you all that it does not matter where you're from. What matters is where you are going. Don't you ever count yourself out. If you only believe, you will achieve. Always set out to win, even if the odds seem to be against you. What is important is first you trust in God, and then you must believe in yourself. And then know that you can be the change you deserve. Mr. Speaker, women have always been at the pillar of our society. And there are some very strong, encouraging Bahamian women that I must thank today. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank my mother, Darnell Chipman Ward, along with my aunts Alice, Sonia, Donna, Mitzi, Edwina, Ernestine, and Selena. You are all part of history. You are all on board without delay. I would like to publicly forgive and thank my grandfather, John Chippy Chipman. I know he's watching. And I want to thank him for being who he is. Yet another good reason to believe in the awesome power of the Almighty God. Mr. Speaker, I must thank some history makers. My team captains, Zinnia Watkins, Natasha Johnson, Georgette Cadet, Danny Nairn, Daphne Delaney, Fontella Chipman Roll, Philomise Tenatian, Shakima Taylor, Joan Evans, Peter Cartwright, Cheryl Cartwright, Juan Cartwright, Tara Ambrister, Nicole Miller, Victoria Burrows, Natasha Woodside, and Gregory Mintz. You were truly an A-team. You all led the way to history. Without them, Mr. Speaker, I would not be standing before you, and there would be no place in history for me today in this place. Thank you all from the bottom of my heart. Mr. Speaker, I must thank St. Agnes Church and its many members, and Mr. Iran Flea Brown for their continued prayers and the awesome commitment of their outreach programs to the inner communities, inclusive of Centerville, East Street, and Bain and Grantstown. Tuesdays with Pastor Carol Colby in Centerville was amazing. Her God-sent messages and direction will forever be etched in the souls of myself and the people of Centerville. Mr. Speaker, as I bring my thank yous to a close for now, let me say to the people of Centerville and East Street, approximately 4,700 names will forever be a number for the history books. I want to say how much I appreciate them giving me an opportunity to serve them. Roll Avenue, the Valley, Culmersville, Centerville, Mason's Addition, Fort Fincastle, Farm Road, and Windsor Lane. Centerville gave me their time, a most thoughtful gift for all. They honored me with their vote. They rose above their politics to do what is best for their children and their community. Alone, they realized we could do so little, but together, we can and will do so much. Once again, thank you to the community of Centerville. I would like to thank all of you for making this possible. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. I can never be what I ought to be until you are what you ought to be. This is the interrelated structure of reality, according to Martin Luther King. To my predecessor, I will continue to pray that the good you would have done will last, that the lives you would have touched was for the better, and that your soul continues to dance as Centerville and this Bahama land marches on. Mr. Speaker and members of this honorable House, I do not believe that it is by chance or luck that I am the member of Parliament and the representative for Centerville today. At some point, we must all be able to identify when God has moved you from that category of being called to one where you have been chosen. And this administration has been chosen for such a time as this. I stand today on the shoulders of a political and entertainment heritage in our country, both of which I am extremely proud of. Horatio Chipman, my great-great-grandfather, would have been around the table in 1837. H.N. Chipman, my great-grandfather, would have stood in here in 1928. Hubert Chipman, my cousin, would have stood here in 2007. Now I, Reese Chipman, a fourth-generation member of the Chipman family, stand before you today. Generations, Mr. Speaker, of a commitment to national development, public service, and the empowerment of the less fortunate. Generations of a commitment to Bahamian entertainment and culture. Generations of a commitment to love of God, love of each other, and love of country. Today, I stand here representing the Picasso of the Bahamas, which is the new Centerville. We will no longer paint the inner community as a ghetto, but as a Picasso of the Bahamas. Public office is often challenging, disorienting place for many. However, because of my lineage, I am fully aware what such a responsibility entails. I will not stand here and reiterate cliches such as I plan to carry forward my ancestors' will during my stay in public office, or even the will of predecessors, because truthfully I do not. To say that is to focus on what's old, maybe outdated, methodologies concerning our youth and our country. Mr. Speaker, to say that would not consider the innovation and creativity necessary to reduce our deficit, to increase youth employment, to spur job creativity, to inspire small businesses, to reduce our debt obligations. Mr. Speaker, I am future-focused. I am a progressive. We need to breathe new life in our economy and our people. We need innovation, diversity of ideas, newer and more profitable industries, and so on. That will only come about if we change, I dare say, abandon previous methodologies that have been followed these many years. We must focus on what is good about each other. It was a future worth voting for, and now it's one worth fighting for, and together we can. Globalization is getting more aggressive every day, and I fully believe that the man that cannot adapt will be at a grave disadvantage. The Bahamas currently has a flat growth rate, while our neighbors such as the United States and Cuba are on an upward trend in terms of growth. Our country is lagging behind our contemporaries, and that will continue if we do not make deliberate and aggressive changes. Changes in fact and in appearance. That is why it is imperative to establish an independent director of public prosecutions. It is imperative to strengthen the office of the Auditor General. It is imperative to strengthen the capacity of the Department of Statistics to improve the timeliness and reliability of statistics, which are critical to decision making. Mr. Speaker, it is indeed the people's time. To the wonderful people of Centerville, your Member of Parliament is committed to using every single penny allocated in this budget for the benefit of the people in the Centerville community. We have been allocated $30,000 per year for the establishment of the Centerville Constituency Office to ensure that the community benefits from educational and awareness programs, job programs, psychology and legal clinics, as well as empowerment programs and access to available resources. Our administration is committed to a level playing field and the ease of doing business. Our Centerville empowerment programs will assist with facilitating business licenses, driver's licenses, and passport and visa encouragement programs to better assist constituents with harnessing opportunities, whether it's in the workplace or in their own businesses or even in their personal lives. In wake of the upcoming hurricane season, we, the Centerville constituency, would have completed a disaster recovery program plan for the constituency to ensure that disaster notifications, resources, and assistance are available for the benefits of residents. Environmental disasters disproportionately affects our inner communities, as lower household income results in less spending on provisions to ensure safety and recovery. Hurricane Matthew had left a number of Centerville residents without food or electricity, even to this day. It is truly the people's time to me. It means putting the needs of the people and the Bahamian people at large in the forefront. It means being a voice for the community, not a voice for myself. It means increasing academic competency in our youth and decreasing youth unemployment, thus lowering crime levels. It means increasing opportunities for our professionals, which as a result will stifle the rate of the brain drain. No country can maximize its potential if many of its talented young people enlist their talents permanently in the development of economies elsewhere. In pursuance of our vision, our budget would also include the $100,000 to assist the community with capital works requirements. Our Minister of Finance would have tabled the Constituency Capital Grant Bill, which will implement rules and procedures to govern the use of these funds for the constituency of Centerville. Our budget includes allocations to 4 school boards in our constituency: Stephen Dillett Primary, Centerville Primary, D.W. Davis Junior High School, and Palmdale Primary. These funds are primarily used to assist with the overall school environment and facilities to ensure an environment that is conducive to learning. I would like to take this opportunity, Mr. Speaker, to congratulate all of the students that will be graduating tomorrow from the Columbus Primary School. There would be 93 of them. Stephen Dillett, there would be 137 of them. Next year, it would be the Centerville Primary School, 53 of them. And D.W. Davis, next Thursday, there will be 150 students graduating. So we would like to take this opportunity to congratulate not only the parents and the students, but also the teachers, the principals, and the school boards of those institutions. The key to economic development is monetary and fiscal responsibility. Not only do we have an obligation to spend wisely, but we have an obligation to monitor and negotiate the cost of borrowing. Ideally, this culture of accountability, transparency, and fiscal responsibility will trickle down into our inner communities, thus allowing for better saving habits as well as better sense of financial security. Our economy is primarily dependent on tourism. However, the inner communities depend mainly on the construction industry, as well as special projects that may include the tourism, security, and domestic hospitality industries. We must create opportunities that would allow individuals to maximize their potential in sales and technology, thus creating a path to financial independence. The speech from the throne spoke to the need for adequate training in the public service at all levels and the creation of a Justice Training Institute. The government recognizes that education and training of Bahamians are key factors in the progressive and sustainable economic development of our nation. The Centerville constituency looks forward to participating in as many training programs that are available in order to ensure that residents are able to benefit from sustainable employment. Many constituents are concerned about contractual work in the public sector, whether or not they will be permanent and pensionable. PNP is what it's called. The politics of these issues can no longer stagnate the very essence of what we believe. We would have just celebrated Labor Day. In the public service area still, in fact, there are week-to-week or month-to-month programs which speaks to a larger issue of stagnant wage growth and lack of savings. The contractual relationship in itself does not promote regularization or stability and leads to a mindset of carelessness and sometimes complacency. Constituents want their work hours to be counted, whether it is to stabilize their families, seek promotions, or to professionally or personally develop themselves. Mr. Speaker, the employer has a responsibility to create an environment of creativity and productivity, but most importantly, safety and security. This will impact economic growth directly and impact sustainability indirectly. Centerville welcomes the budget. The community is looking forward to a reduction in VAT on bread basket items. The community is looking forward to the reduction of duty on the most used consumer products. However, we must ensure that price control, consumer protection, is an effective tool to ensure benefits are realized by lower income households. Mr. Speaker, the government will institute urban development by revitalizing heritage communities and expanding the need of social services. Many persons in the area of East Street and Centerville depend on urban renewal to assist with housing needs, and the impact of hurricanes makes this need even greater. Residents look forward to urban renewal redevelopment and the proper management of contractual work and adequate quality assurance to ensure the funds are being spent properly. The constituency office will be there to help all residents of Centerville, and a complaints file will be established to assist with adequate communication. The constituency office will liaise with all government departments and with legal counsel, whether it be public or private sector, to ensure that the rights of the individuals in our community is protected. Not because we're from Centerville, you will have the right not to pay us for a while. Many persons are still complaining about not being paid for months from various sectors of society, be it public or private. In conclusion, Mr. Speaker, this is about empowerment, about empowering a community to dream big, to access what belongs to them, to believe in what is possible, allowing them to be free of political indulgence and giving them an opportunity to take care and sustain their families. This is about the next generation of Bahamians, about leaving behind not just words but deeds, about giving, loving, sharing, and making the Bahamas work for us all. This, Mr. Speaker, is about the love of God, each other, and our country. Finally, I would like to read an excerpt from a benediction by Bill Clinton. I will continue to pray that God would leave within us the youthful idealism and moralism which have made our people strong. Sicken us at the sight of hatred, apathy, ignorance, and rejection, so that our generation will remove complacency, poverty, and prejudice from the hearts of free men. Make us care that we will never know the misery and muddle of a life without purpose, and so that when we die, others will still have the opportunity to live in a free land. May God continue to bless us all. May God continue to bless the people of Centerville, and may God continue to bless the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
As many?
As many? The chair recognizes the member for Pinewood.
Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker, good evening. I rise on behalf of the honorable, the dignified, the strong, the proud, the brave, the industrious people of Pinewood, whom I have come to love, respect, and whose credit I must work to maintain. I stand because not only have I been elected to them, but we have forged a relationship that has made us one, and we are a unique family. The win at the polls was not just simply a win of politics. It was a commitment to a relationship that was sought throughout our campaign as we made the commitment to go to every house, and by the time that we started counting the ballots in an election, we would have fulfilled that commitment and have touched base with 98% of every household in that community. And in furtherance of that commitment, right after the election, we went back into and finished those remaining streets because we made that commitment. So let me take this time and give honor to my Heavenly Father, whose mantra keeps me strong, and that is, the Lord is good, and his mercies are everlasting, and his truth endureth through all generations. That is such a solid mantra for me that the theme that we took in Pinewood was based on that, and we said we are there for the good of Pinewood. And that is what we will do. I must take this time because I am one who fully believes in heritage. I believe in reciprocity. I believe no tree grow in the woods save from the dying leaves and the carcasses of the trees that would have fallen before them. The nutrition that causes me to be where I am came from somebody I may not have even seen. But because they were there, I am here. So I must take the time to acknowledge the people who sometimes my strange ways, I ask, why do I act this way? People say it's strange, and somebody say, you know what? You're acting like your grandpa. And then I realize that a little bit of them exists in me. So not only do I thank God, I thank posthumously Bishop Henry A. Butler, my granddad, whose life lessons have stuck with me. Annie Butler. When growing up as a child, if nobody else had an encouraging word, she'd come and say, hey, Roopson, Grammy saw you, you know. Grammy proud of you. As an old man with kids, you'd be surprised to know how memories like that causes you to remember the child on the inside. It kept me humble. Because when I had opportunities to commit wrong, or because I may be bigger and stronger and could retaliate, I remember with Grammy smile. It causes me to take time in annals of our history to acknowledge people like Leonard Ramming, my granddad, who at age 96 used to be marching all the parades in Fox Hill with a flower in his mouth. He was the coolest man since dirt. And my Grammy, Doris Wims. It caused me to remember that I'm here because of the good, the bad, and indifferences that I've learned in being in the house of my father, Reverend Dr. J. Carl Ramming. I can tolerate people for being a preacher's kid long enough. You begin to realize that church ain't always sweet, and Christians ain't always kind. And it's a sacrifice to serve people who would smile and probably still stab you in the back. I learned a lot from being in a household of Reverend Dr. J. Carl Ramming and my mother, Evangeline Ramming, and I give them honor. I married a very beautiful woman in the person of Natasha Ramming, Fox Hill girl. I have 4 kids, Amber and Rasheen and Robin and LaShawn, who has stuck with me throughout. Yeah, they had a choice, sort of. And I thank God for that home, and I thank God for the people that gave them to me. And that is Marinette, yes, I call the real name, because it's going to be written down, Marinette Jackie Wright, and posthumously Leslie Wright. I also thank my godfather, Leon. We are shaped by a community. We are never of ourselves and by ourselves. We complain about our politicians, we complain about our police force, we complain about everything that is around us, and we fail to realize that all of those things came from us. So sometimes when you complain about one, you need to take a minute and pause and see what's your own makeup. See what's the demon on the inside. I acknowledge the ministries of St. Paul's and indeed my personal Bible study group, Emmy and all the crew. Yes, Johnny's, that's a deep story, they know what I'm talking about. And I thank God for the people who has shaped my life. In a sense, I even thank God for the PLP, without being derogatory, because if they had not been what they have been, I would not have felt the need to have stand up in this environment and take the stance. I've never been into politics, don't like to be called a politician. I like to be called Reuben. I'm comfortable in my own skin. But there are times when things are going wrong that we as a nation and as individuals must stand up and face the tiger. We must realize that when persons begin to get to the point, as stated in the speech from the throne, and power becomes something that people feel that they must worship instead of principles, then we need to change the paradigm. Because power should always be driven by principles. And so I thank them for motivating me, and indeed also our leader and our team for affording me the opportunity to be on the ticket of the party in which I stand as a part of. When I came into Pinewood, I came with the same spirit that was endowed and placed within me from those same persons in the community of Fox Hill, and years shaped around building people. And with that vein, he didn't walk into Pinewood saying, oh, here I am. We met with all the pillars in that community one at a time, and they said, listen, we're here. I'm not going to walk the street unless you're going to come with me. Show me the community. Teach me your ways. Help me to understand. And I've come to realize that Pinewood is an opportunity-drenched, soaked, full of potential community. One that if we provide truth, transparency, focus, and direction, will be a model community within the society. And with that coupled with my background and experience, we will bring out the good that is inside Pinewood. And we'll ensure that the children in Pinewood will see from among themselves the heroes that currently reside within that community. Because you cannot build a community from the outside in. You cannot motivate a country from the outside in. If people don't see people like themselves achieving things equal or better than others, you will not have the motivation nor the sustainability to bring out the greatness in your country, your community, your home. We must see ourselves in the things that we do. We must look at it and say, if my brother can do it, so can I. And we will do that in our community called Pinewood. I give thanks to the team that we would have had working with me throughout the elections, who were not just a campaign team. I told them from the beginning, if you work with me, we reign together. We work because we're building a community. We're building a community structure. We're building a community network. We're not building gods of MPs. MPs are but tools and access to government. MPs are the mechanisms that afford that your representation is properly afforded to you. We ain't your baby daddies. We ain't your mortgage and your light bill payer. We are the ones when things don't go right in the system that was constitutionally designed to protect you. We are the ones that fight for you. And I can say this because we just had a meeting last night in my community where we began to lay out the bricks and mortars. We had the first association meeting. The first thing we let them know that the F&M is not pine wood. That was an association meeting. And we will have community meetings where no politics reside, when everybody can come in around the table and say, this is how our community will be. We will design a community that will withstand Reuben or any other person that may have a political title. I am personally sick and tired of great ventures going up in smoke simply because somebody else come from a different political persuasion and throwing away something that would have been invested. Our budget debate shows the wastage that would have happened in our country that has brought us to the level of stress and downgrades that we suffer right now. Some of it is done even by wasted talents where we damage and demotivate people who would have put energy into programs that are apolitical, but because of a new agenda and because someone would have touched it from another party, you throw it all away. I want to say that what is good should simply be good, regardless of the color. And for those opposite, when we do start to bring accountability, I must also say what is bad, if it is bad, and it needs to be removed despite of color. Because we must bring transparency and truth to whatever we do if we want this Commonwealth to be what we expect it to be. So, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I am here today just to remind our people of the commitments that we have made already, that we will push forward to establish and to develop the community to a better place from which we once met it. When we read our speech from the throne, that is truly a document that is reflective of what we had aspired and we will accomplish as a government moving forward. And it is not something that should be taken lightly at all. We must go and we must focus and rebuild the values that make us so unique as a Commonwealth, that make us so unique as a Bahamian people. We would have lost that along the way. So often we would hear about people talking about the goose that laid the golden egg and how valued the tourism industry is, and it is so misplaced because they come here to see us. And if the value is in us, then it is devaluing to change us. Things like Carnival that changes who we are. It makes you wonder what makes you so unique. Your uniqueness is not just your geographical location. Your uniqueness is the way you cook, the way you act, the things you do, the way you do the things you do. And that is the greatest selling point of this country. If we seek to emulate everybody else around the world, if we seek to copy everybody else around the world, then the question is, if you are just like everybody else, what makes it worthwhile coming to see you? We must find who we are. We must elevate our heroes. We must remind the people that it is worth coming here to spend $300 a night in a room, because when you come here, you're going to hear about things Bahamian. You're going to see things Bahamian. And I hope, by God, by the time we reset, you're going to hear Bahamian music all around our towns. You see Bahamian culture growing to a new level. You see stronger investment in the things that make us unique. We'll find the unique flavors in our food, and we remind the people where it comes from: cooking, sports, entertainment. The Bahamian people is world-renowned. If we do that, we bring value back, Mr. Deputy Speaker. In Pinewood, we will seek to empower those persons that are around. We inherit as a new politician some strange things, because there are so many bad practices that have been out there that put unreasonable obligations on MPs, that you sit there and you look at your job description, then you look at what the expectations out there is, and you say, hold on, that has nothing to do with it. And at the end of the day, for $28,000, you say, listen here, at the end of the day, I got to go borrow some money like everybody else do just to pay these things. Oh. We will have to teach our communities what is the proper mandate of us as MPs, so that they would understand and know what to expect. Because disappointment is expectations not fulfilled. Because if we continue moving around showing them and making them believe that the only place you're going to get a job is in government, well, you know what's going to end up happening? You're going to end up in problems for a false notion and false ideal. We must ensure that our people understand that the government you rob and the government you broke is really your pocketbook. The money that's wasted and the job you think you're getting for overcrowded places when sending people with bad attitudes to give you bad service is a self-creating monster. So allow the government to refine itself, become lean, mean, fighting machine so it can do what it needs to do. So that we can cultivate an environment in business where you can strive. There are businesses out there that can make more money than the government could ever do. There are things inside of our young people that can produce more revenue than a so-called government job. There are things that you could do that could bring about better security for your family than sitting there looking for a sidewalk contract. We must bring out the greatness in our people because that is how we bring greatness to our Commonwealth. The problem with this idea of power worship that we see around extends even down to our religious community. I touch base to that because guess what? Peter ain't better than Paul in a lot of these different ways. You find out that the most difficult persons to relinquish power are those who've been in it too long. So I must, with that tone, commend the Bahamian people for realizing that defect and resetting the clock. And I pray to our Heavenly Father that none of us catch this stay there forever-itis and this dynasty-itis as if somebody who don't have your last name don't got somebody with a brain who could come in here and make a contribution. Amen. With that, I acknowledge again the fact that I truly support when we put those term limits on our prime ministers and possibly even consider putting some time limits someplace else. Because we have gotten to this point when some persons have become so thirsty for power that they begin to look at themselves as God. And when they begin to look at themselves as God, now how you spend my money don't matter. Sit small. When you look at yourself as God, traditions begin to fall away, and you find yourself not wanting to come down to cut a cake because you got to finish your sermon. When you lose perspective simply because at the end of the day, when we lose focus that this is about the people, for the people, and by the people, and if you don't respect the people, you'll someday realize that you're one of the people. A job of a good MP is to take the opportunity while you are in the job to build an environment conducive for you when you get out of the job. You fix the road so when you get back into your Toyota, you don't run into potholes. You make the business system smoother so when you go back to your regular job, you don't have to wait 6 months for a business license. You make the hospital better so that when you end up there and you don't have your special passport and your blue plate, that you can get proper service. You pave a way so that the day comes when you're there, you can get best service. That brings me to something that is very dear to me. Because within our community in Pinewood, we have community homes that exist there right now. We have 2 of them. One is the A&A Comfort Care. The other one is the Twilight Home for the elderly. And I would like to speak to the heart and the soul of our people. We need to understand something. I don't mind if you're selfish, you know. Just be smart with it. Because if you're selfish, fix the road if only for your own self. If you're selfish, fix the hospital if only for you. You don't got to like nobody else. Just fix the hospital because you're going to end up there one time. If you only care about yourself, treat your elderlies right. You know why? Because one day, you can get old. You see, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I don't have to love you to treat you right. I don't have to love you to want to come and stop crime at your door. I don't have to love you when a hurricane comes to ensure that the roofs are fixed for people who you know may be F&Ms. Or vice versa, PLPs, of an opposite political persuasion. I should do it simply because when the hurricane comes, it ain't gonna know no color. And if my roof can knock off, I would like to know that I'm on a reasonable, fair list, and when my time to come, they ain't gonna leapfrog over me because they realize that he was an MP for Pinewood, and you know, at the end of the day, he's an F&M. It's about fair play. The conscience of the nation, we're here speaking about the debate of finances, but the character of the nation is reflected in its actions towards its widows, its orphans, the poor, the elderly, the disabled, and its culture. So at the end of the day, while those who are appropriately skilled speaks the numbers, which are very important, we must also add the spirit and the character of it. Because we can be the wealthiest of nations, and if we disregard the least among us, not only are we fools, but we are heartless people. So I would like to see, despite this not necessarily being our budget, and as we go further, that there are greater consideration offered to those who are least fortunate as expressed in our speech from the throne. That greater emphasis will be placed on those who are of greater need. There are too many times that we look upon Bahamian people as beggars when they come for social assistance. Let me remind you, they contribute to the consolidated fund. They are protected by the Constitution of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. So when they come to get a government assistance that by law they qualified for, they should be treated with respect and not as if they're given some kind of favor. I am not one who believes in that level of entitlement that I see in some countries to get to the point where a person won't have 50 kids because they're getting paid so much for the kids. It causes that kind of negative response. But we are here to represent the interests of the people. And although this may seem widespread, I am specifically also speaking to what I am witnessing in my community called Pinewood. And this will stop because it is my job, Mr. Deputy Speaker, to ensure that whatever is in these documents that speak to whatever they need, it is my job to ensure that they have access to it. It is not my job to lead them like a horse to water to drink. But if they go to the trough and the trough is empty, it is my job to find out why the tap ain't running. In our community, there will be a shift. I grew up realizing from my grandparents that the greatest power a man has is his own personal fortitude. You could change the world. Everybody else could jump on later. Have the commitment, Mr. Deputy, to your personal conviction. Be who you are. And teach people how to respect you, or they will treat you however they want. In our community, when I realized the greatness in our community, and as every day I'm coming to understand better the intricacies of governance, there are things that we had committed on the campaign trail that we will put in place. Because I believe in the biblical narrative that was in the book of Genesis chapter 11 that spoke about the Tower of Babel. They hear so much about the negative side of it, about the language being confounded, that they miss the big message. When you have a person or people moving in one direction, one language, one speech, they thinking the same, God himself said there is nothing they imagine to do. Not even what's there. Ain't nothing they can rig up that they cannot accomplish. Despite the dire straits of this country, if we work together in truth and unity, we can overcome any obstacle. We could change the opinion of Moody. We could change the mood of the tourists. We can do whatever we need to do if we make up a collective order that as a nation, this is what we stand for, this is what we will do, and this is how we will do it. In our community in Pinewood, we have made that commitment. And so with that, within the first year, we will establish the Pinewood Multi-Purpose Co-op. It's very, very simple, you know. We will combine all the skills, Mr. Deputy, that we have within our community, and we will bring them together and form them into a cluster so that our people in the community who are struggling right now because of the big fish in this economic climate is sucking the wind out of all the opportunities that the small guy could have survived on. There are a lot of large companies right now forcing subcontractors literally to work for them, not as subcontractors, but as employees, because the job market is so unlevel. And so what's happening now, we're bringing those guys in off the street. Why are you sitting on the block and you're a three-phase electrician? Why are you sitting on this block and you're a master carpenter? When we pool them together and we form that cooperative, I would say, as for me, one of the motivations for that cooperative is to bring greater transparency, because I told them, say, listen here, there are contracts allotted to my community that goes through, and into your cronyism, ain't nobody coming into me. When y'all get your act together, build something else, guess what? I'm going to put it there, now y'all take care of your community. Because in a cooperative, it is not politically motivated. It's one man, one vote, and there's no form of cronyism. And what will end up happening is the young man will realize that my community is not only where I live, but it's where I can make a living. And when they form themselves and they develop their skills in their community, then they will be able to compete for contracts and jobs throughout their Commonwealth. And then for Pinewood, the wealth will truly be common. So we will build them and we will focus on training them to develop in these areas. It will provide an opportunity where there is a code of conduct for the young men. So you can't be breaking into Ruby's house and molesting Ruby's daughter and say you want a piece of this pie. We expect for you to act a certain way. It helps us with the apprenticeship program so that they'll be able to get the hands-on training. It will build relationship, because understanding breeds tolerance. That's one of the best ways to reduce violence and crime. Every man, Mr. Deputy, has a vision. And the greatest tragedy in life is when you have a man working outside of his calling. It's uncomfortable. It's very uncomfortable. And many of the young men that I've come across who may have been perceived as deviant, when you have a sensible conversation and you quiet the rhetoric, I don't want to hear about your boys, I don't want to hear about that, me and you talking. Sit down. What's going on with you? What's in here? You begin to find out that they had a dream that got suspended or retired. One of the greatest weapons against crime is not the guns and the cars, though they have their place. If you can get a young man or a young lady following their dreams, I guarantee you it will take their mind of any deviant activity. We will change the violent model to whatever standard it may be in my community, simply because we will get people working so diligently on their dreams because of what had been stated by this administration in the speech from the throne. We will position Pinewood to be ready like a grower waiting for each fruit to come in its season for the things that have been listed in that speech from the throne. When the skills bank would have come out nationally, we would have a skills bank and directory already ready in Pinewood. When they began to jumpstart and the Fresh Start program, our young people are already drafting their business plans and their ideas, because we're going to get ready. Because the job of the MP is to be a pimp. And let me qualify with that pimp is, see, you all think pimp is that stuff on the side of the road. I'm talking to pimp to say, you know what? Something coming. Get ready, my community. Get ready, my... Because you know what happening? All these other people can get their people in, so Pinewood, get ready. It is my job to look at every policy and say, you know what's happening? They're going to make business license easier. We're going to make this happen. Get your idea going. You know what happened? There's going to be a jumpstart program. So that idea you had, get ready. I'm going to snitch to my people so much, you all may decide to really keep me out and block me out, because my job is to ensure that what is best for them, that they are ready for it. Yes. We would not hide no good thing from the people in our community. So there are some things that we'll need to do. So Pinewood will be business ready. And it's happening right now. And I'm so amazed at the level and the quality and the skills that I see that is happening right now. So when we are developing our skills bank, we are designing our apprenticeship program, we are working our athletics program. The program that we will establish in Pinewood, and we will push for it starting this summer, is whatever Olympic activity out there that we can duplicate in this area, in Pinewood, we will. If Jamaica could have a bobsled team, the Bahamas could realize we could run fast. What other Olympic sports we have not tapped into yet? Because there's taboo. What can stop us from excelling in archery? What could stop us and being even better in gymnastics and other things? In my community, there are some of the best boxers and trainers and some of the best boxers. Thriller Millett is in our community. Quincy Pratt sits right there. He lives in Pinewood. In our community are some of the best artisans. Isaiah Taylor from Bahamas is in my community. When we build our community and our parks, they will be strategically designed to introduce our children at an early age to a multiplicity of sports and disciplines. And it's so much so that we will introduce them to the way our ma used to do it. Because there are some people who didn't know they liked to play the piano until ma said them go play that piano. And today they realize that they had a competency, they had an ability, they had an affinity for something. We must introduce our children to things. These benefit us health-wise and otherwise, because right now the greatest entertainment is to be on your phone and working your thumbs. And now we're suffering from diabetes and other health ailments because children don't play like they used to play. One of the greatest motivations during the campaign trail had been when I met 3 girls, and I used that as a statistical norm. We said, Mr. Raming, are you going to do something for girls in basketball? And after I heard that a 3rd time, I went to my people and said, you know something, that has to be a need. They say only 3 girls. I say, look at the statistical norm of that. If you met 3 young girls in different streets in different areas who didn't know each other and they raised a concern, statistically, that has to be an interest that we need to explore. Our young girls want to do more, so we'll do that. One of the things that was said, Mr. Deputy, in the speech from the throne, and I stand wholeheartedly with that, is that public safety is an immutable right. So therefore, as it relates to security in Pinewood, we will step forward and we will maximize the full benefit, not only in this budget, but the love and concern of our Minister of National Security, and bring to bear all aspects of what we can as a community, community crime watches, community organization, sporting activity, relationship bonding, and we will make a difference as it relates to the perception of crime in our community. We have to change the mindset of our people. Those children who commit a crime, parents must own up. The Word of God says, by your fruits you should know them. So if your child acts a certain way, and I call you mango, don't call me wrong if your child is a mango. That means you're a mango tree. If your child is a deviant, then me and you need to have a conversation, because somewhere along the line, you're representing something to your child. We will have hard-based structures that will allow us to engage parents properly, so that we can properly acclimatize our kids and socialize our children so that they can be better citizens and better fit within their individual communities. Because right now, it's amazing that we worry with the guys with the guns on the street. And I think it was just last year, we had a child with a gun that came to school, right? Had a gun in his bag. But these practices start early. So we will put special emphasis on our young kids and be able to acclimatize them by bringing 12 Bahamas scout groups. We'll be bringing service clubs into the community. We'll have so many varieties in that community that there will always be options for persons to be able to do things that will help them develop and be able to serve each other much, much better. Right now, one of the things that concern me, Mr. Deputy, is that the environment many times is not a reflection truly of what goes on in our society. Look at Bay Street. Many times on Bay Street, you walk down here and to be quite honest, it looks like a flea market. The level of filth, the level of dirt. The same thing you see happens in too many in our communities, notwithstanding the hurricanes. Cleanliness is a major issue. So ours would have been done in other communities that I would have worked for before being in this place. We will institute in our community an annual spring cleaning. That annual spring cleaning is where we will create a mechanism for you to get everything out. But we will not enable you by coming to you every day, toting your garbage, emptying your garbage man. There are people who got that job. And you must be accountable for your own waste. We will ensure that after the annual spring cleaning that we would have done, that we will ensure too that those persons who have that deviant lifestyle of dropping those wrecked cars and things that deface their community, whatever gravity needs to be brought to address that situation, let it happen. Because without penalty, people will continue to do what they need to do. They need to understand that your house is your greatest investment. And whatever happens in your community affects the value of your home and your investment. So you cannot be living in a palatial house and your neighbor living in a junkyard and you expect your neighborhood to be better. It must be a collective responsibility for all to be able to address the cleanliness of their neighborhoods. We will re-engage our parks and bring them to some state of usability and normalcy so our children can have an environment that is conducive to proper sports, fun, and the learning that extends from it. There are two major items that I want to drop, nay three, about our community. Pinewood is renowned for the flooding. And it amazes me how, for so long, these matters have not gotten sufficient traction in terms of a solution. It is difficult because this debate and this budget is not this government's wholehearted budget. But this MP has made the commitment and has already begun to forward recommendations and documentations to ensure that that matter is addressed. And I would say, without any regard for personal reputation or otherwise, whatever it takes that I must do, no matter how high or low that I must go, that matter must be resolved. There are too many persons who are traumatized by the annual expectations of rains and flooding in that area. And if we believe what we said about Genesis and the Tower of Babel, there is no problem that cannot be fixed if we really go at it. Fixing the flooding in my area is not just a matter of simple flooding. I've listened to us investing almost $30 million in Carnival, and the statement was we didn't expect a return in investment. Well, then why you can't invest $10 million then and fix a problem in Pinewood whose return will yield tens of millions in value? Can I qualify that? If you fix the flooding problem, then the next time somebody looks for a house for sale in Pinewood and see a $120,000 four-bedroom house, that's a deal. Then see Pinewood and say, next. If we address the flooding problem in Pinewood, the value and the equity in houses without anything being done will rise. And calculate that over the thousands of houses in the community. The environment of the community will change. I want to say to this House that that is one of the greatest investments of public funds that we can ever make for a single community by addressing such a need. Our community must have that matter addressed. And we must do it as a matter of urgency. I want to make the report that documentation has already been submitted, notwithstanding not having the current ability to go into the major works, that we review all current plans that exist. And in the meantime, there have been recommendations put forward for the remediation of all existing wells and possibly a few other ones to allow us that while we're in this rainy season, that we can properly bring some degree of comfort to our people right now. Because the wells have not been properly addressed and they have not been cleaned and they need to be serviceable. We are in the hurricane season and we are indeed in the rainy season. So that must be done. With that vein, we will also have our own community disaster and hurricane relief structure. It is strange to me that when things need to be done in the community, many times we fail to look around to the resources within the community. And in our surveys of the community, we found that there exists sufficient skill set to be able to afford us to have within the community, for the benefit of the community, persons who can actually service, manage, and deliver the services that are actually needed to not only mitigate some of the issues with the flooding, but also to prepare our people to be one of the first responders in the event of a hurricane and a disaster. There's another vexing issue that I want to also address and make known. And this is one of those matters that is grievous. There is in our communities, and I think the side opposite would know of this as well, and I acknowledge what seemed to be from the documentation I have that some work has been started on that with the Nassau Village Seabreeze Property Owners Association. I think for the mind of the public, they will probably remember it from the time when the church got knocked down. Yes, this tied into basically that, where there were issues relating to the land title between the Arak homes and the persons who has houses in that area. Not to disparage anybody or to ruffle any feathers. There had been represented documentations from meetings that was last had in April 2017, just before the election, that would have caused our community to have reason to believe that a solution was nigh at hand. And if that is the case, I have been requested to at all and by any means necessary to seek how truthful this great news actually is. So wherever it stands and however it goes, it is very, very imperative that whatever deal that would have been set on the table for land swapping according to what had been presented here, that we pursue that, because those persons in polling division number 11 and those persons impacted in Seabreeze and Nassau Village and those homeowners who would have paid for their home, these aren't squatters, these aren't persons who went and they followed the process. That we do whatever we can as a government. And indeed, if necessary from the current opposition perspective, it does not matter. Let's just get this done. We need to ensure that these people have peace of mind. One of the greatest causes of illness, fatigue, frustration, suicide is stress. And we must be sympathetic to the plight of people who, when they look back and said, I did all the right things, I followed all the procedure, and at the end of the day, this happens to me. Now I'm paying for a house twice. Why I have to go through this twice? And all the systems seem to fail. Somewhere along the line, we must either continue to step up, should this be so that the former administration was beginning to look at this, and we must bring this to a conclusion. Because the commitment, from what I understand here, that there should have been, by now, a few weeks ago, some positive communication to these homeowners as it relates to the plight of their land. So the commitment is we will continue to follow through with this, and we'll ensure that this matter is properly addressed speedily. I want to take the time to acknowledge to our government that our people, especially in the Pinewood constituency, is so elated by some of the things that have been mentioned in the speech from the throne. So many of our single mothers can't wait for the opportunity to get access to the rent-to-own program. That's one of the things I'm pimping off every day, telling them, get ready, get ready, get ready, because it's coming. Mr. Deputy, this is very, very critical, because we know the mortgage regime in our country right now has not been an easy hurdle for people to overcome. And this is indeed very, very critical for families right now who are not only renting, but who find themselves not at the end of the day having any reasonable investment or return for all the years that they've been spending renting in their communities. So we're glad about that. With my background in transportation, I've been also asked to advise on a few things, because we had announced in our speech from the throne, in which I support, that there would be considerations as relate to the ownership of taxi plate and those persons who would have been leasing taxi plates. I think that is good, and I trust my government to be fair in their processes, and I applaud that. But I must also manage them that there are other franchises that are also disenfranchised. That we should not only stop there, but let's consider our best effort to level the whole playing field. In my former incarnation, I have also always expressed that we don't necessarily have to disenfranchise somebody to franchise somebody else, but by God, we must do something. Because we need to ensure that persons have equity and they have full benefit of the labor and whatever is afforded to them under the laws of the Commonwealth of Bahamas. I must also interject a recommendation. There have always been, and particularly as it relates to the public service vehicles, Beforehand, 2 tiers of exemptions, and now there's one on new vehicles. Realistically, one of the best shot in the arms that we can do is to revisit the exemptions as well on public service vehicles and allow exemptions with conditions to be applied to vehicles that reach to the age of 10 years with conditions. That may seem to the persons who are not totally familiar with the industry, 10 years is a long thing. But I guarantee you, you can find vehicles of suitable quality for 10 years, you can get additional 15 years out of. And for the price of one of these new buses, somebody can get on their feet with 3. And so we need to look at, especially in this area and business development, where we can really give people an opportunity where they can really capitalize and expand their livelihood. I believe this is good because I know the outcome and the outcome of the work of this government will bring prosperity back to this country. I am confident of that. I have no doubt in that. Given time, dedication, the commitment of the Bahamian people, and sticking to our commitments, there will be a turnaround in our tourism industry and all of our businesses in this country, because this is the work we are here to do. So in the meantime, can we make provisions to afford our people to get ready and brace themselves for the change? So this is indeed very, very important to us. Mr. Deputy, my last point that I want to state is something I said on the campaign trail when motivating our people to stop looking for handout and find the greatness within themselves. And that is, I began to let them know and speak about certain things, why it is so important and why the Free National Movement at that time was stressing the importance of business development. And I began to say something to them that I would like to say to the public. I remember when the Bahamas incident came up and this matter came up, we did what we did in the matter of national security. I don't know if some people said that. But there is something to me that qualifies as a matter of national security, and that is small business development. To all of my fellow Bahamians out there that wake up in the morning with a dream, a crazy idea, something they think may not work, we need to get Bahamians' ideas and concepts off the shelf and into reality as much as possible. Because it is a matter of national security. If the rate of foreign business growth continue or begin to outpace the rate of Bahamian business development, our economy will be lost. If the rate of foreign business growth by volume and size, if they continue to be the largest of entities within our country, our society is lost. You can have parliament as much as you want if you don't own the economy of your country. If the economy of your country does not represent the demographic of your people, then we would have lost our Bahamas. That is a matter of national security. So I encourage us to stand strong in our commitment to small business development. Give them the best opportunity to not only succeed, but even fail. Some of the best opportunities in the world happen not after the first failure, second failure, third failure, but by the time that fella got around to his 9th or 10th, or like WD-40. It's called WD-40 because it was on the 40th time he got the formula right. No, Formula 1 to 39 didn't work. And the Formula 40 got it right and is making money now. So don't judge our people on the failure. Encourage their fortitude. Tell them to be like a phoenix and rise at every occasion, because we are counting not only on the government, we are counting on our children, the dreams of the Bahamian people to get up, do better, be better. Stop asking and start doing. And I will borrow from John F. Kennedy. Don't just ask what the government could do for you, but show them what you're ready to do for your country. This land is my land. This land is your land. This land is a Commonwealth of the Bahamas. And by the grace and help of God, the wealth under this administration will be made more common. So our Bahamian people, to my people in Pinewood, this is not an easy road, but it's coming. This is not our budget. All the things you think you want to see will not come, but there's no excuse why you should not get ready, because your change is happening now under the minister-led Free National Movement government of the Bahamas. Mr. Deputy, thank you, and God bless the Commonwealth of the Bahamas.
Thank you, Brian Wood. Thank you, Brian Wood. As many? As many? The chair recognizes the member for West End and Bimini. West Grand Bahama, West Grand Bahama and Bimini.
Good day, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I rise on behalf of the resilient, innovative, and patriotic constituents of West Grand Bahama and Bimini, where West End is the capital of Grand Bahama and Bimini the gateway to the Bahamas. Today, I thank God for favor. It gives me great pleasure to stand here before you, Mr. Deputy, and also among the honorable members of this House, following the sweet and historic win by the Free National Movement at the polls on May 10th of this year. I must admit, I am among those many Bahamians who remain in a celebratory mode, knowing that with the Free National Movement at the helm of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, battle will no longer be elusive, but indeed on its way to becoming a reality. Mr. Deputy, we are at a time in our country in which those that have stood at the back of the room are finding the courage to step forward. We are at a time in which our youth are demanding leaders that are honest, transparent, and accountable in the actions that they take. We are indeed at a time in which politicians themselves are keenly aware that no one individual has a hold on any seat and that no one government is the end all. It's the people who remain the strength of our communities, capable of building up or tearing down. It is perhaps safe to say then, Mr. Deputy, that this past election, the people of the Bahamas chose to uplift their communities and put in place a government that has the best interest of all Bahamians at heart. That government, Mr. Deputy, consists of members of Parliament that will get the job done par excellence. Individuals who in their respective fields have toiled the grounds, preparing for a harvest that will be bountiful for all to partake. That harvest, Mr. Deputy, will come in the form of a country in spite of current challenges and setbacks that will march on. We are the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, for which it stands, one people united in love and service. Mr. Deputy, born at the West End Clinic, raised in Deadman's Reef, schooled at Holmes Rock Primary and 8 Mile Rock High respectively, not to mention numerous summer vacations to Bimini as a child. One can only imagine why this community is so important to me. I am West Grand Bahama and Bimini. I have lived both trials and triumphs within. I walked the shoreline and climbed trees. I caught the school bus and skipped rocks on the waves. I played marbles and barked almonds with my male cousins. I stripped banana tree leaves that were used to line the skillet of my grandmother's famous potato bread made in an outside oven. Mr. Deputy, I tried fishing, but for some reason they were adamant in not biting and continue to do so as of today. Mr. Deputy, I looked out for my little brother and sister as my mom worked tirelessly to ensure that we received a good education. And yes, Mr. Deputy, I went to bed on tea and bread many nights. Those days were good days for me, Mr. Deputy, and I would not change it for the world. Mr. Deputy, like many others in their childhood, I also experienced the downside of living in what many refer to as a rural area. I experienced daunting looks both as a child and as an adult, which suggested that if you were not from the city area, then your chances of succeeding were slim to none. I am familiar with outside toilets and water pumps, not to mention toting buckets of water and washing clothes with a scrub board and big tin. I am familiar with borrowing sugar and cream from my neighbor and having them do the same. I know what is panny cake, flour bread, and switcher, and what it's like to have to go to an uncle or an aunt for lunch money. Mr. Deputy, I have witnessed the struggles of my forefathers and foremothers, and I do not take it for granted. I am proud to stand on the shoulders of great men and women such as my grand-uncles in the form of prominent educator Walter P. Parker and Out Island Commissioner Wendell Parker, both of whom have passed. My mother, Cora Wilson, grandmother's domestic engineer and farmer Irene Parker Rule, and church organist Jalita Darling of Acklands. Mr. Deputy, I also stand on the shoulders of the hard-working men and women in polling divisions 1 through 14 of West Grand Bahama and Bimini. Men and women who gave of their time and efforts tirelessly during the recent election to begin the path of change in their community and country. Many of whom, at the crack of dawn, arise out of their beds and go to work on a daily basis, pushing for better lives. Unfortunately, however, there are many who do not, as we continue to experience an unacceptable unemployment rate in Grand Bahama well beyond 13% as of November of 2016. There are no ands, ifs, or buts about it. Grand Bahama's economy remains at a delicate stage, one which has to be addressed strategically, with long-term success in mind. Truth is, there is no quick fix to the situation we now find ourselves in, Mr. Deputy. While residents of Grand Bahama are urging that something be done and done right away, it will take detailed planning and new and innovative ways to bring the island out of its stagnated state. I am of the belief, however, Mr. Deputy, that Grand Bahama and the Northern Bahamas in its entirety is about to witness a turnaround under the Free National Movement administration, a government for the people. With that being said, Mr. Deputy, I am blessed, honored, and so appreciative of the expressed confidence in me to serve as the voice of the constituents of West Grand Bahama and Bimini in this honorable House. It is a job that I take seriously and will commit myself wholeheartedly. I wish to bring representation that is exemplary and one which demonstrates a true heart for the people that will result in better homes, communities, and indeed our country. Mr. Deputy, I feel that it is essential to restore the constituency which I represent to its former glory and to an even greater extent beyond that of the past, with a vision of modernization combined with the flair of old school charm. A vision aimed at positive growth and development in which the young and old are true benefactors of their hard work and labor. A community in which entrepreneurship thrives and innovation is the order of the day. The people of West Grand Bahama and Bimini, Mr. Deputy, are calling for a change that will result in their communities experiencing an economic boom and residents empowered. Our campaign, Mr. Deputy, focused on 3 areas that we believe will make a difference in the way our community looks 5, 10, 20 years from now. That basis was planning, partnering, and empowering. Our view is that in order for positive growth and development to take place within our constituency, we must first plan the way forward, followed by partnering with the private and public sectors to make those plans a reality. It is by doing this, Mr. Deputy, we believe that our people will be empowered. Politics, Mr. Deputy, may be the arena that we are currently in. But this honorable member does not subscribe to playing politics when it comes to the lives of people. Reality is, Mr. Deputy, we all have choices. I chose the F&M. Some chose the Progressive Liberal Party and others the Democratic National Party. But in the end, Mr. Deputy, as a representative for West Grand Bahama and Bimini, I am the MP for all constituents. Mr. Deputy, there is much work to be done in West Grand Bahama and Bimini, and we must begin with our youth. There is an urgent need to develop programs inclusive of technical and vocational initiatives to that of outreach. The reality of an opportunity society presenting itself is also needed as we continue to face a challenge of having our young people left to fend for themselves, many with dreams that die due to lack of resources, especially financial. Mr. Deputy, our community is blessed with talented youth who are victims of a system that strangles their vision and holds hostage their dreams. Under the Free National Movement government, Mr. Deputy, our aim is to change that. We also must not forget those that came before us. They are the ones who gave us much to get where we are today, and that is why we have such a culturally diverse community. Mr. Deputy, it appears that we are now experiencing a generational divide in our country, and I am of the view that it is high time we bridge that gap by bringing generations together rather than tearing them apart. Rather than promoting young against old or vice versa, we must instill that teamwork makes the dream work, and no matter what we are faced with, we must all coexist if we are to see a better country. Each person has a role to play. We are all parts of a puzzle when placed in the right positions, make for a beautiful picture. Every generation has a story to tell, Mr. Deputy, but no generation can tell it alone. We need each other, and the sooner we realize that, the better off we will all be. Mr. Deputy, as it stands, West Grand Bahama and Bimini is lacking in many areas. And therefore, I will utilize this honorable House to advocate for change in our community. Our district has been neglected over the years, and the needs of the people have fallen on deaf ears. Mr. Deputy, it is the cry of the people that has brought me here to speak on their behalf. We are currently faced with shortages in after-school programs and extracurricular activities for our children, facilities to foster their growth and development, job opportunities, home ownership, and investment. Mr. Deputy, there are projects which started but remain stagnated in our community. We are lacking a proper landfill, as indiscriminate dumping by members of the public remain a challenge. Mr. Deputy, we are faced with a high school in the form of 8 Mile Rock, which has yet to receive the focus needed structurally, among other areas. While students in Bimini are in need of a school and are presently experiencing a shortage in teachers and the absence of core subjects such as English and math. Mr. Deputy, this is unacceptable and should not be happening in the 21st century. We must get serious about preparing the next generation, otherwise we face the stark reality of losing them. At this moment, Mr. Deputy, Many constituents of West Grand Bahama, West End in particular, remain without homes following the devastating impact of Hurricane Matthew in October of last year. There are complaints of residents having been looked over, and for those that were assessed, very little done as homeowners continue to utilize buckets to catch water dripping from their roofs inside, while others are displaced at the mercy of landlords who await rental payments promised to them. How can this be, Mr. Deputy, when the previous administration borrowed a reported $150 million for hurricane relief efforts, topped with donations from other countries and international agencies? It just does not add up, Mr. Deputy. Mr. Deputy, as the Member of Parliament for West Grand Bahama and Bimini, I am also privileged to have been given, it doesn't add up. Numbers don't lie. Numbers don't lie.
Order, order, order.
I am also privileged to have been given the job of Parliamentary Secretary for Information and Communication. As a mass communications major, Mr. Deputy, I am aware that information is what makes the world go round, and lack of it can result in you being left behind. We need information on that. The same can be said about communications. The way we communicate will determine whether or not people are just hearing us or whether they are listening. We need them to listen, Mr. Deputy. With the advancements in technology and the various forms of media, the race to see who gets information out first continues. Needless to say, social media, with all of the concerns expressed, remains the fastest. We must therefore put in place policies which will ensure that not only are we on top of the news, information, and technology, but responsible in the way we deliver it by being accurate, professional, and unbiased. Mr. Deputy, social media is fast, but let's be mindful that speed can kill. Truth, however, will always be respected, and as such, mainstream media must continue along that path while also meeting the demand of a population that wants information at the speed of light. The information and communication industry is widespread, Mr. Deputy, and also includes telecommunications, theater, film, print, radio, and television, to name a few. At the end of the day, we are to showcase our country through this medium, and what we put out there will determine what we get in return. Members of the public, Mr. Deputy, have long called for our communication entities to up their game, and while that call remains, truth be told, there has been a remarkable shift towards better. However, there is much work to be done. We are hopeful to find members of the public who are willing to bring their skill set to the table and contribute significantly to the growth of this industry, which around the world garners billions annually. Mr. Deputy, I am excited about the decision to eliminate or reduce the cost of several taxes so as to ensure that the load on our people becomes lighter. In the case of the communications industry, I am certain that the proposed rate of 35% on sound and video equipment compared to the existing 55% will be welcome news for those in the industry. Additionally, microphones are proposed to see a 10% decrease from that of 45% to 35%. It's a start in the right direction. Mr. Deputy, over time, this honorable House will hear the voice of West Grand Bahama and Bimini. Sometimes it will be tamed for peace sake, and other times it will roar for country's sake. But at all times, it will be the voice of the people of a community whose only desire is to be given a chance to spread its wings and fly. Mr. Deputy, I am thankful to my family especially my husband Trevor and children Trevor Jr. and Tasani, who have released me to work for the people. I am grateful to friends, community, and country for this honor bestowed. I plan to work hard, and that, in my view, Mr. Deputy, is where great results are achieved. I thank you, and good afternoon.
Thank you, S. Grand Bahama and Bimini. As many. The chair recognizes member for Garden Hills. Yes. Member yields. Chair recognizes the member for Bamboo Town.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the business of the House do suspend until tomorrow, Thursday, the 8th of June at 10 a.m.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Member Southern Shore, second. It's being moved in second. Business of this House is suspended until tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. As many? As are in favor, please remain seated. Those contrary, please stand. The business of this House stands suspended until tomorrow morning at 10 a.m.